Howdy y'all, this is AR Cavly. Welcome back to my channel. And it has been a spell since I've put anything up, mostly due to lack of anything interesting going on to to put up. However, today I'm going to do a review, sort of a product review of my latest RPG offering, Fimbulvetr. This is a Mythic Viking campaign written for OSR slash D20 rule set. On my channel, you see I have done a review of the Forge. This is the new edition rule set, which is a simple, very cool D20 set with a lot of good oracles in here. This also has oracles, Fimbulvetr, but they're of a different sort. So I highly recommend that if you get this, you get this as well, because it does have some tables that are not reproduced here. But you don't need it. Everything you need is right here. I have a couple of other games that use the same background. This is designed specifically for D20. And let's go ahead and take a look into the book. All right. This is, like I said, this is based on Forge. And it uses the same type of character creation. A lot of the same OSR type works, things that will be familiar. I won't go into depth about the different types of rules that it uses, because as far as the base game system, it does use simply what's in Forge, so I go into detail on that on my review. But it uses that same type of non-class character creation. One of the changes that I made is I used a XP from battle from hit dice. I've never been a fan of the XP for gold, or gold for XP. One, it doesn't make a lot of sense in this type of setting, especially because there are not a lot of coins. It's not a world where you walk around and find a 3,000 gold piece necklace. I also decided to play around with a sessions played level advancement. Um, it's quick and it's easy to use. To keep track of characters gaining level without worrying about XP required. Basically, just counts sessions. The alignment, I added a little bit in there to make it a little more Norse or Viking type mentality. A lot of what you see, a lot of what I put in here is historically based. It is a mythic setting, so there's magic and monsters and things like that. But I do discuss a lot of the culture and historical type weapons. Here's a list of the characters that you can just use presets. And you have the same type of tables that you find in the original Forge, but set up for, modified a little bit to be more Iron Agey. And here's a good list of names and a discussion of naming convention, male names and then female names. The trading and gear, because it is a barter society, it's a society based on you either make it or trade for it, or you go without, basically. But I did put equivalent, even though they don't have coins, I did make equivalent to silver pieces for the gear, which represents different types of things you might trade, goods, hack silver. The weapons are historical type, what you'd find there, so you're not going to find any two-handed long swords or um, anything that's Renaissance or late medieval. But you have your sakes and your spears and gears and war axes, a lot of good Viking type weapons. Discussion of hirelings. One thing that I did make that I also changed is characters can lead more people than typical. I decided that it was important for them to be able to lead a war band, and the way things are set up currently, not only just in Forge but in a lot of the OSR, you can lead two or three, but that doesn't really leave much for being the commander of a war band. So I did increase that. That is one change. Everything here, time, movement, exploration, whereas Forge uses a very cool procedural rolling system, which I suggest incorporating as well. Like I said, I do suggest getting Forge along with this. But this has more traditional, you move a number of hexes and you have encounter tables. Weather tables, and a lot of these are the same kind of rules that you find in here. There's some diseases just for the Norse types. Another change I made is that helmets also add to your armor class, so they're for more than just crumpling. I don't think I made too many changes to the attack, but it's your standard, roll initiative, roll to hit. There are options for critical hits, whereas the base rules you can do an extra die of damage. But instead, I added also this critical table that you can use to apply conditions instead. Now I've made the downtime be again more Viking-ish, if you will, where you have blots, which are sacrifices, gaming, the types of games, lawsuits, and actually describe some of those. The character death, I use a form of what's in Forge already, but when you're down to 0 HP, if you fail your con check, you're dead. If you make it, then you roll to see what bad thing happens to you for surviving. Activity resolutions. There are crafting magical items and enchanting and stuff, but the world is not one where you're going to sell. You're not going to walk into a city. For one thing, there's only one real city in this setting. Most everything else are small villages and homesteads. But you're not going to walk in somewhere and find a magical shop. But there are rules for making magical enchanted weapons. And a lot of them are you get bonuses for sacrificing critters, people, gold, whatever. All right, same followers. Like I said, the main change is that people can control more. A lot of times, I think in Forge, the suggestion is that if you don't have enough, then you just hire commanders. But unless those commanders have their own special set of rules, that excuse me, if they don't have their own, they have their own special set of rules, then they can only, lead a couple, a small handful too. Um, so it would be, as written, almost impossible for someone to control a long ship with 40 people on it. There'd be no captain, or there'd be 10 captains. And there's basically the same mass combat rules that they have. There's a discussion of the historical views of magic, Galdr, and Cedar. Now, there aren't as many spells. There's a good number of spells, but the magic in Fimbulvetr, in this world, is different in the sense that really almost anyone can learn it, and there's no colleges or there's no real spell books. You might have Johann the farmer. He knows how to cast or his wife knows how to cast a healing spell, and that might be the only person that knows how to cast magic in a long radius. Now, Cedar is basically feminine witchcraft. It has a shorter list of spells, but they are overall more powerful. And then here's a discussion of what things happened. The basic idea is that Ragnarok happened, and Freya took pity on the humans who were fighting alongside, and she cast them into this hidden prison world named Jarnheimer. She did this in hopes that because only a few knew of its existence, that the monsters that Surtur and Fenrir and all the people attacking would leave the humans alone. And that was 7 generations ago. And one of the big questions is, in this world, did the gods survive? So there's kind of a aspect of, I guess, loss of religion, loss of gods. Do they exist? They believe and know and see that the land spirits that they are very common, are commonly concerned with, elves and house spirits and things. Those exist for sure. No question about that. But the gods, do they exist? Hard to say. And here's a discussion of how the communities are set up, leaders in law, social classes. And here's the Norse calendar modified slightly for this world. And NPC and monsters. Discussions of what they are, and then the basic kind of OSR / Forge stats. Animals, Vargar. Vargar are like the big primal monsters. And then you have all of your Vatir, which is kind of a general term for everything that's sort of the spirit world or mystical world. So gods, giants, the elves, trolls, the hidden folk. And so each section talks about describes the monsters, and then has the end, or has the stats in a table at the end of the chapter. Now, I've only made this in a 5x8, and that was my choice because that's how I like my books these days, small. The buying the book or the PDF will get access to a larger file that has the maps, but here's one without hexes and with hexes. And there's the label. So if you want to do hex crawl, or if you just want to do count the miles as you go, so to speak. It's meant to be a wilderness to be explored. So it's designed to come across all sorts of things. But here, our list of 12 places of import, and they are described, these sites, with how many people they are, usually more than one hook that you might find there. I like that one. Fimbulvetr. I hope I said that right. I'm not even sure if it's a real word to say right, so maybe I just said it right because I said it. And here are some campaign tables that are specifically set up for this setting. All right, so if you want to generate a campaign or an adventure, here's a quest table where the main part of it is, where the main part of the adventure is, challenges that they will meet along the way, aside from, whoever you've got planned as being the big bad guy. And then here are some settlement tables because, like I said, it's meant to be explored. So you come across different settlements. Most settlements are going to be small villages. And so you roll to see what their initial attitude is, what kind of unique tags they have, some tribal troubles. Oh, that should have been on the other page. Village names. So you can just come up with all sorts of village names. And then random encounter table for traveling or whenever, broken down into wilderness, wetlands, or settlement. There's another just random critical hit table. And then here are discoveries for some of those random encounters, and for when you encounter a new hex, you roll to see what kind of description, what kind of interesting terrain features, what kind of discoveries you might come across. Much like what's in Forge, just in a little different format. And then a treasure table. It's fairly minimal because, once again, this is not a setting where you're going to find a lot of magical type items or even great treasures. When you find them, it's going to be a big deal. But there are tables too, if you find something pretty cool, because certainly as a mythic Viking, mythic Norse setting, obviously there's going to be your saga worthy weapons. And then there's a slightly larger map. And I redid they all basically has the same info, but these are the character sheets, the companion sheets, and follower sheets. Forge has some sheets for keeping, for mapping out villages, and keeping track of time and things like that are pretty handy. So once again, and then here is a list of Nordic resources that I found be pretty cool. Now, obviously, I'm not going to go back through everything, but there's the PDF. I tried to do my best to make sure that all the links work, and it has the bookmarks and everything in it. So, and if you get the book, if you buy the physical version, then I always have all of my games set up so that you get the PDF free. It's pretty cheap. I will put down the information in the notes below with a link to it. And if you like OSR and Vikings, then I would suggest you check it out. I like it, and it makes a great, a great companion for a larger body of Forge settings or additions, third-party type things. So anyway, Fimbulvetr, Mythic OSR Viking Adventures by moi. Leave the links below and check it out. And all of Long Shadow Press games, which are all very excellent. So anyway, happy gaming, and we will talk to you later.